Welcome back to Sports Cards and a Cup of Joe. This is your host, Joe Davis, and it is great to be back with you today. You know, if you're joining on the Got Baseball Cards YouTube channel and you're not familiar with this series, this is a podcast I started almost a year ago, and there's about 90 episodes already out there on the Sports Cards and a Cup of Joe channel, so you can listen to those episodes on any major podcast platform. But for today, thank you for joining us, and we're going to be talking about, actually I'm going to be trying to answer the question, what is it like to be me for a week in this industry? You know, I'm often asked what it's like to be a card store owner. I'm often asked, or actually I should say I'm often told, Joe, I sure wish I had your job. Joe, I would love to do what you do. And it can look really fun on the outside, and it can be really fun from the inside, but I can tell you it has its challenges too. I can tell you one thing for sure, I never start a day where I say, I'm probably going to have another boring day, because that just does not happen. Every day's a new adventure, every day's exciting with something new in store for me. So I'm going to give you a sneak peek into what one week was like for me. I'm going to hit some of the highlights, because I know many of you are store owners yourselves, or you're part-time dealers, or you're big-time collectors. Maybe you're just getting into the hobby and you're interested in what it's like behind the scenes. So I've looked back over the last week, and I'm going to give you some tips in the midst of sharing some things that I experienced last week, clients I interacted with. And I'm going to start off with last Tuesday. I had an opportunity, and I always love opportunities to visit a seller's home to see what they have, because you never know what you'll run into. A mutual friend contacted me about 10 days ago and said, Joe, I've got a collection for you that I really need you to help my friend with. So I had a Tuesday morning appointment to drive to Atlanta. His house was about an hour from us, and Atlanta traffic is not great. If you're from the metro Atlanta area, you get that. But I made it out to his house in about an hour. And one teaching point I want to share in the context of this is, when you're doing transactions, or you hope to complete a transaction with a seller, is first of all, you've got to be relational. You don't normally just show up at someone's house and say, yep, I'm here to buy your collection. How much do you want? Let's get this done. It's not how it works. That may happen at a card show. It's often more transactional. You walk up, hey, I want that card, here's my $20, and you're done. It's not what it's like when you're buying a large collection. First of all, you need to build trust with the seller. You need to help them understand that you're there to assist them, not to take advantage of them. And as soon as I walked in, I had great rapport with the seller, and he wanted to show me his collection. He wanted to show me other things he collected that he wasn't wanting to sell to me. So for the first, 30 to 40 minutes, we just walked around his house looking at mementos from his life, looking at things he collected, and looking at some things he wanted to sell that I really wasn't even interested in, but I was there to help him. I was there to answer questions, to help him understand what he had that had value and didn't have value. And so we looked through tubs and tubs of Sports Illustrated magazines that I wasn't really that interested in. I looked at a collection of signed baseballs, a lot of names that I wasn't really that interested in, but and many mementos and things he'd collected that he had no desire to sell. But I tried to provide information to him as to what those items were worth anyway. So like I said, it took me quite a while to actually get around to what I had gone there for, to look at his collection. But as a longtime insider in the industry, I'm often asked to assist with things like that, whether a collection is involved or not, and that's part of serving clients, which is something I love to do. So when we finally got to the room where the cards were that he wanted to sell, there was one table with the good stuff. There was a Nolan Ryan rookie, there was second year, third year Nolan Ryan. There was several Mickey Mantle cards from the 60s and more, and I'll share more of that in a little bit. But first of all, there was a huge stack of notebooks. And whereas some buyers might walk in, just focus on the meat of the collection, the big stuff, I knew I wanted to help him just in case he had missed something. So I spent the next 30 to 45 minutes or so going through a pile of notebooks in his living room, just in case he had missed something. And sure enough, there was a nice early 70s Willie Mays. There was a couple of Brian Piccolo rookies. There was a couple of Gale Sayers rookies. There were some decent cards in there, which I factored into my offer that I eventually made. And after going through all the notebooks with a fine-tooth comb, trying to see if there was anything big he had missed, I then went over to the table with all the bigger cards. And what was so interesting about this collection was this gentleman had large quantities of 1962 Topps cards. But what was interesting is they were pretty much all from the first series. And when I mean large quantities, like a dozen Roberto Clementes, like 15 home run leader cards with Mantle and Maris, large quantities of, and some not so big names, Tom Tresh and Casey Stengel and many other, Sandy Koufax, Stan Musial, other stars that were all from the first series. So all I can guess is that at some point in his collecting endeavors, he intersected with someone who had opened several vending boxes of 1962 Topps Series 1, because he even had a notebook filled with large quantities of 62 Topps, all in nice condition, all from the first series. So that was very interesting. But I spent probably another hour running numbers, running calculations on what I would pay, and honestly, we didn't agree initially. We were about $1,000 apart on what I wanted to pay and what he wanted. And so I thought, okay, well, how can we make this work? So I had made an offer on all of the cards in the collection, but then I said, well, he's got a little bit of, he's got some other stuff that I might be interested in that I was trying to find some value in. And I have to say this was probably one of the most interesting collections I'd ever purchased, because before it was all said and done, I ended up with some autographed footballs, such as this Steve Young, nice Hall of Fame Steve Young football that was not part of my initial purchase, but he had several autographed footballs, and I was trying to find a way to make it work. So we were off by $1,000 to start with. So one lesson I want to share with you is that sometimes when you're buying a collection, you may narrow it down to the specific things that you want, but sometimes you may have to take a little bit more to make the numbers work. So you've got to be flexible. So before being able to complete our purchase, I had added several autographed footballs to the purchase, and then we still weren't quite there to the number he wanted. So I was like, well, what else do you have? And he was like, well, I happen to have some autographed animation cells from Hanna-Barbera. Now, those of you who listen to my podcast, who have interacted with me in person, you probably know what a huge fan I am of old cartoon characters. We have an entire website as part of our business, which is cartooncards.com. That's Cartoon Cards with a Z, cartooncards.com, which we launched last year, which is focused on the history of cartoon-related trading cards. And probably my two favorite product line, animation lines, I guess you could say, are Peanuts and Hanna-Barbera. And so he took me into his bedroom, we dug in the closet and found some animation cells signed by Hanna and Barbera. And I'm like, okay, you've got another item, another group of items I'm interested in. Then we returned to his basement to look through his Sports Illustrateds again, because even though my back is not really up to carrying thousands of Sports Illustrateds back to our shop, I said, well, I can dig and try to find a few issues that really stand out to me. So we dug through several tubs, and I pulled out the first Michael Jordan cover from I believe it was 1983, and then also the first Michael Jordan NBA cover from 1984. So I pulled those out, a couple of Hank Aaron covers, since I'm a huge Hank Aaron fan, and a couple of others that were interesting to me that I thought had a little bit of value. So when it was all said and done, I ended up buying the card collection, some autographed footballs, some Sports Illustrateds, some animation cells, and the kicker for me was he actually had a Flintstones ceiling fan. Yes, believe it or not, I ended up with a Flintstones ceiling fan as part of this collection. So you got to be flexible. In this industry, it's not all cut and dried. It's not, I'll pay this, that's my offer, take it or leave it. You've got to be flexible. And I love to buy collections, and I love to buy a variety of collections with a lot of different items included sometimes. So you've got to be flexible and know that sometimes to get what you really want, you may have to take some things you don't necessarily want. The top end of what I bought in that collection, if I'm lucky, I'll probably break even on the rest of it. But I bought it to get all the stuff I actually did want. And you'll be seeing more of those cards coming back in the future when our grading team gets done with them, because they have so many cards to process right now. And thank you to each of you who submit with us. And one thing I have failed to mention lately, we are still running the special where you can do grade now, pay later, where you can submit your cards now, and as long as the value's there, you can pay for them when they come back. We're trying to be really flexible with submitters because PSA is taking quite a while to get stuff back right now. And so if you have cards you need graded, let us know. We'll help you with that. All right, I'm going to get back on topic here. That was one day in my week. In fact, that was only half a day. And I remember by the time I got in the car, my day, I was already quite behind, because if I miss several hours in a morning, I've got a lot to catch up on. So I spent the next hour headed back to the shop, making phone calls with different department heads here, with consignment, grading, retail, catching up on what was going on here and ways I could assist. But I want to move ahead, to get all this into 30 minutes, I've got to just hit the highlights. But I want to move ahead to this past Friday. This past Friday was going to be our relaunch for Whatnot. And if you're never on Whatnot, or if you are, just search for Seller Got Baseball Cards. We're going to be on there periodically. But my goal as the business owner, I said, it's important for me to be on there on our first stream that we've done in many months. And I was excited. I'm like, I'm going to get on there and talk to these collectors and interact, and it's just going to be great. Well, we did about a 2-hour stream Friday morning, and I think I was on for all of about 6 minutes. Because, and when I talk about being flexible as a business owner in this industry or any other, you've got to be flexible, because different priorities will often supersede what your plans are. And so I had planned to be a part of that stream and spend a lot of time with collectors who were tuning in to interact with us. And instead, I ended up spending a lot of time with a client down in our retail who walked in that morning with a 1913 Tom Barker game set. And if you're not familiar with it, they're not playing cards, but they're the size of playing cards. But this was a card game. There were two versions. There's one called I believe it's the National game, and then the Tom Barker game. And the Tom Barker is the rare of the two versions with these players. But this client, first time he had visited us was last week. And this game includes cards of, again, this is 1913, Ty Cobb, Wagner, and how about Shoeless Joe Jackson, and many other legendary Hall of Famers. And so I spent a lot of time with him going through that set, pulling out all the key cards for him. There's actually two different Ty Cobbs. There's one with his name, and there's an action pose. But I was helping him understand all of these make sense. In fact, he only wanted to send in a few of them, but I went ahead and sleeved all the others that I recommended for grading in the future, because there can be some really good money in those once they're graded. So I missed out on the Whatnot stream other than a few minutes. I'll hopefully get back on another one soon. But that was how I spent my Friday morning, trying to be available to clients here. So be aware that as a business owner, whatever your plans are, have to be flexible, because they will change almost daily, sometimes minute by minute. And so I am constantly reprioritizing my day. It is rare that I just have a plan and I get to stick to it throughout the day, because at any moment something might come up. Many emergencies, hopefully not too many of those, but things happen, and you've got to be flexible and be willing to switch gears in a moment's notice. And now I want to share with you what our Saturday was like. Because this past Saturday, I spent nearly the entire day out in our retail store, which doesn't happen that often. I am typically in the back. I am typically working with our different divisions on different things. I am typically on the phone for hours a day with clients. And so it's very rare that you will see me out in the retail store for 7 hours straight. But that's what I did this past Saturday. Most of my time was spent in retail with clients, and it was a fantastic day. I walked in, I think, at 9:02. We open at 9 a.m., and my son-in-law, Henry, was already with a client, and I walked in the door, and he had a large stack of unopened boxes on the counter, including some Topps jumbos and Topps basketball jumbos, and honestly, I don't recall what else, but he had several boxes piled up on the counter to purchase from the minute we opened, and it's always great to start the day off with a $1,000 plus sale as soon as you get the day going. And the next 30 to 45 minutes, we're not crazy busy, but by probably 10:30 or so, we were just slammed throughout the day. And I looked back at texts to my wife, Jane, talking about, and I literally said, we've just got to get a bigger place. Like, customers are running into each other trying to get up to the counter, and I couldn't even get to them. We had one time where we had so many shoppers going through our bargain boxes, and if you haven't been in lately, if you're here in the area, come and see us. This is something I'm really proud of that our team has worked on. We have countless bargain flip-through boxes, whatever you want to call them, broken down by sport, and everything's priced between $2 to $15. And we literally had clients last week. We had one gentleman stay nearly the entire day. I think he was here for over 6 hours, and our tables are just filled with shoppers sitting down with those boxes, having fun. And to me, that's just the bread and butter of the hobby. It's not opening $2,000 boxes. It's sitting there and going through bargain price cards, looking for your favorite players, looking for rookie cards, looking for prospects, looking for vintage cards, finishing sets, you name it. And we had so many going through these boxes at one time, I could barely get out of where our retail counter is because my office is past that area. And I couldn't even get back to my office at one time. And I was also landlocked and couldn't get out into the rest of retail to get to some other clients, because in the midst of this Saturday, we probably saw 150 or so different customers come in, which, for some huge mega stores, that's not that many. For us, in a 7-hour period, that was a lot of different faces to see come through the door. But what was great is, it was a great sales day, and we're thankful to each of you who came out. But what was great is we were able to assist so many clients with grading. And as a business owner, you've got to be informative, you've got to be educational, because clients are always coming to us asking questions. And so over the course of the day, we took in hundreds of cards for grading. We had one client drop off, I think, 136 cards. We had another gentleman, and I loved this one. It's always exciting as a sports card store owner when someone walks in with an old beat up box and he says, "We found this in a house." And he said, "We found this in a house in Tennessee." And he plops it down and tells you, "I think I've already pulled all the good cards." And laying on top is a 1954 Topps Ernie Banks rookie. So I'm like, "No, you haven't quite got all the good cards out." And so I spent probably 20 minutes with him going through every card in that box, pulling out multiple Ernie Banks rookies, many vintage Yogi Berra cards, Bob Feller, you name it. There was a lot of stuff. And so he dropped off all of the biggest cards with us for grading, and then eventually for consignment, as we're going to get those cards sold for him. But I love seeing the look on someone's face when they come in, because I've experienced this so many times. and they don't really know what they've got, and we're able to brighten their day by saying, you've got a lot of money, a lot of value in these cards here. And so we were able to do that with this client. But in the midst of many others coming in the store, we also, Saturday, I got to assist someone with a Michael Jordan rookie. Always exciting. Sadly, more often than not, the ones that come in the door are counterfeit. And my episode, I think it was episode 89, I did a whole episode on counterfeits and the plethora of them hitting the hobby right now. Thankfully, this one was real. I knew it as soon as I saw it, and I went ahead and checked it more closely, but I'm like, yeah, this one's good. And the sad thing is, and here's a warning to collectors, he had it in a big 1-inch thick screw down. And some of you already know where I'm going with this. So I told him, I said, well, here's one thing to be aware of. When a card like this has been in a large, thick screw down and tightly screwed down for decades, you run a lot of risks. And one of those risks is that the card can often give the appearance of being altered, even when the collector never had any intention of altering the card. However, when the grading companies examine that and that card has been pressed down, the screws are like this long in a 1-inch screw down. And when those have been pressed down for decades, what will happen is the corners will often flatten out. So that gives the appearance that the card has been altered in some way. So I warned him of that. And then the other bad news was when we took it out of the screw down case, there were white flecks near every corner of the card. And the reason is he had it pressed down in a soft sleeve as well, and it had created pressure points on the card. And so it basically had flecked some of the finish off in four areas of the card. So obviously he was disappointed because the card is probably going to grade much lower than he had hoped, because the corners looked great, the edges looked great, the centering was a little bit off. At first examination, I said this looks likely like a 6 or 7, but then obviously after taking it out of the screw down case and I saw those other issues, I said sadly that's going to drop it down quite a bit. So we will see what happens. But it was a big day for basketball rookies coming in the door, because not only did we have the Jordan rookie come in, but we also had someone bring in a 2003 LeBron pristine refractor. And if I recall, this one was numbered to 149. Very, very, very big card, multi-$1,000 card. This one was still in the original case from Topps from 2003, 2004 season. And that one is also on its way to PSA along with the Jordan rookie. So we saw a lot of big cards, and sadly there was another big card that came in the door Saturday that we were not able to take for grading, and that's because it was a counterfeit. Customer came in, he was excited, he was literally in a line of submitters turning cards in, one after the other. And he came up and he had a 1916 Babe Ruth. And sadly, it was not real. And I went ahead and did my due diligence to look at it with him more thoroughly. But as soon as he showed it to me, I said, oh, I hate to tell you, but this one I don't believe is real. But I went ahead and checked it with a loop. I went ahead and did the feel test, as I call it. I checked the surface, and this one had a bit of a sheen to it, just a little bit of gloss. So if you know what I'm talking about and you're familiar with early 1900s era cards, they're not supposed to be shiny. They're not Topps Chrome. They're not Prism. They're not anything like, they're not even just they're not a foil finish or anything. And this one had quite a sheen to it. And the other dead giveaway to this one, you just don't normally see 1916 cards with sharp corners. And this one had 3 really sharp corners, looked like they had just been cut. So I told him, I'm sorry, this is counterfeit. But that brings up a big point. He appreciated that I helped him. He also appreciated that I saved him several $100s. And what I mean by that is if he had gone to GameStop or he had gone to any location where PSA just takes submissions in and that he had just dropped the card off, that they would have probably estimated the cost of that to be at least $600 to get that graded. And what would have happened? He would have sent it in, he would have lost all of that money. So that is one of the biggest reasons we recommend, if it's not us, use someone that can give you the education on whether the card is real or not. We see, and I shared this 2 episodes ago, we see so many counterfeits. We see so many Jordan rookie counterfeits. We see, as we did Saturday, we see Babe Ruth counterfeits. We see Mantle counterfeits. There are so many out there. So if you have a card you're not sure about, please, I beg you to save yourselves money. Don't just send the card in. Don't just drop the card off somewhere. Send it to us to let us help you with it, because there are so many bad cards out there. And it's not just counterfeits, it's altered cards. There's so many things that you need to be aware of. So our grading team is great at assisting with that. And I'm not trying to do this for a sales pitch. I truly want to help you. But that was something else we experienced Saturday. So if you and I were sitting down here in the shop and I've done this with many potential store owners who have talked with me about they want to open a store. So they'll ask me other questions like, okay, Joe, so you drive around, you look at collections, which is always a blast. It's always fun. Don't get to always buy them, but it's always enjoyable to get to see the cards. You hope to do things like live streaming and filming content. Doesn't always get to happen. And you sometimes get to handle retail, but what other things do you do as a business owner in this industry? What is your typical day like? And that's the whole thing. There's never a typical day. Every day is an adventure, like I said. One of my challenges, not challenges so much, but one of my responsibilities as a business owner is helping manage cash flow and being careful about how many collections are we buying. Because I'll give you an insider secret that a lot of those on the outside would not understand in this industry. Some of the nicest stores, some of the biggest dealers, some of those who have the most incredible inventory often are cash poor. And you're like, how is that, Joe? And I'll give you an example. A really close friend in the industry called me about a month ago. And they have an incredible store with millions of dollars in inventory. And he asked me, how do you manage cash flow? And he said, I'm broke all the time. He said, typically my checking account is almost down to zero every week. And I told him, and he has an even larger retail selection than we do. And I said, well, you are trying to manage millions of dollars in your retail store with a massive selection of singles and supplies and more. And I said, that's a challenge, because it's kind of like playing Monopoly. And let me give you my Monopoly example. And you don't want to play me in Monopoly, by the way, because I usually win. And as a kid, I loved that game. I don't know why. I would beg my parents, like, can we please play Monopoly tonight? Can we please play? And growing up, no one wanted to play me in Monopoly because I would almost always win. And no one understood it. They were always like, but Joe, you have no money. Like, you're always broke playing the game, but somehow by the end, you end up winning. And the reason was I understood the value of owning assets. And so I would buy up properties, especially the cheaper ones, and then I would buy houses on them and hotels and whatever I could do. And eventually, those assets would pay off for me. The same is true in our industry. When the reason a lot of store owners, the reason a lot of large businesses often run at not a deficit, but don't have millions of dollars sitting in the bank is because they've got all that sitting in inventory. And so much like playing Monopoly, sometimes, at least in a strong market like this, there is plenty of belief in sitting on those assets more than sitting on cash. And so if you're buying assets that you believe are going up, if you're buying assets because you're trying to stock your store with good inventory to keep your clients happy and to keep them coming back, I don't want those who come and shop with us here in Loganville, here in Metro Atlanta, I don't want them to walk into our shop and be disappointed in the selection. So we're constantly restocking inventory. And another insider tip to help you understand one of the challenges as a business owner is we're constantly pre-ordering new product. So dollars are always being tied up in new inventory before we even receive them. And so on any given day, I was just talking to one of my guys in shipping, and I said, well, just spent another $30,000 with Fanatics today, which I was excited about because we need the product. And I'm excited for every case we're offered, whether that be entertainment cards, baseball, football, basketball, whatever. We're excited because we need the inventory. We need not only width of selection, but we need depth of selection. And so one thing we've got to do, and if you're listening, one thing we've got to do is restock a lot of our singles, because we sold through so many singles during the holiday season that we have got to buy up more slabs. We've got to get more back from grading, and we have plenty going out the door, but we know those will be a while before they come back. Another drain on cash flow sometimes is the ebb and flow of working with consigners all over the globe. And for us, we totally believe in offering consignments. Most stores don't do that. Most shops just want to buy collections and move on, and they're done. And I get it. But for us, we love serving clients with helping with consignments. But as a business owner, that takes up time. We have a phenomenal consignment director here in Taylor Pruitt, but I often work with him on what we're going to take in on consignment, because we're offered far more at times than we can get to, so we sometimes have to be selective. But also on any given day, a consignor might be cashing out. And just last week, Taylor was like, XYZ consignor, hey, they need a $75,000 check today because we've just sold a lot for them. So, you sell a lot, you may sit on that for a week or two or a month, and then they're ready to cash out, and then that money's right out the door. So managing cash flow, that's probably one of my biggest responsibilities, because if I don't manage the cash flow well, my team members don't get paid, or that collection I really want to buy, we don't have the funds to buy. So speaking of buying collections, another tip for you. It's one thing to buy slabs, it's one thing to buy a great vintage collection with cards you're going to grade, but if you're listening and you're a future business owner, or you are a business owner in this industry and you're wanting some advice, don't miss this next point. You've got to be wise with your finances, and what I mean by that is we are offered so many collections, and we're grateful for everyone we get offered because it's an opportunity for us. But we have to be very careful. As an example, I'm working with a client right now, and we've sold over $100,000 worth of items for him on consignment. But he has probably the equivalent of 20 banker boxes, and if you know what I'm talking about, the big banker boxes filled with cards. He has that much additional inventory he wants us to purchase. And we've been going back and forth with him trying to find a number that works. But one of the challenges is we have literally gone through every box and every single card in those boxes, and all of the biggest stuff has already been pulled out. If it was worth grading, it's been sent in for grading, and then it's being resold on his behalf. So what we have is a lot of quantity, but not a lot of quality left, because the biggest stuff has already been extracted. And one of the biggest challenges we have sometimes talking to clients who have a quantity collection that may not be a quality collection at that point is helping them understand the difference in book value or eBay value and liquidity. You can have a collection and you can say, hey, I've got $100,000 worth of Beckett value, like they've looked them up in a price guide or they've looked them up online, and they say, and I'm talking raw cards here, and they go, I've got $100,000 worth of cards, and I'll ask them, yes, but how liquid is the collection? How quickly could we process that collection? How quickly could we get through that to extract those dollars and get some sales out of it? And that's one of the biggest challenges, because if I could live off of my quantity of cards, I could have retired a long time ago, because we have millions and millions and millions stacked up here. However, quantity doesn't always mean quality. In fact, usually it does not. And we often have, not breakers, but often clients who have bought from breakers and they've accumulated tons of base cards and inserts. And they'll come in with a 5,000 count box of new cards that they got in breaks. You know, now there's not a single card left in there worth over $5, but the total book value for that box might be $2,000 or $3,000. But how much of that is liquid? Probably none of it. And we get offered boxes like that all the time at a steep discount, because the seller doesn't want to take the time to list it. They know there's nothing in there they really want to grade, and they know to try to extract those dollars out of that box is going to take a ton of man hours. So understand, when you're buying a collection, liquidity matters. Just because it's a lot of cards, just because it's even a lot of old cards, or because it's a lot of rookies, there's got to be demand. There's got to be someone else who is going to pay you more than you're putting into it. So I've learned the hard way over the years. I still remember back in the early 90s, I looked at a collection. He was a regular customer, and he had a child on the way, and he said, Joe, I'm cashing out. I've got to have money for my baby, and I totally get it. And so I went to help him, and he had a ton of cards. His living room was filled with cards. His bedroom was filled with cards. I'm like, okay, this is a lot of cards. And I got excited, over the quantity. And I still remember, this was like 1992 probably, and I gave him $2,500, which was a lot of money for us to spend in 1992. But I thought, I've got, an SUV full of stuff. There's so much inventory here. And to this day, I probably haven't gotten my money back out of that collection, because there was not hardly any quick money. There was a lot of sets and a lot of $10 and $20 and $30 items, and book value way more than what I paid. But liquid value, not so much. So one more lesson, I want you to know that you've got to be careful, because you can buy yourself out of business if you're not careful. And you can end up with a lot of cool stuff, but it doesn't mean it's things that are liquid that you can resell quickly. So there's so many opportunities in this industry. You can go on our Whatnot and you can buy into breaks. You can buy singles on there. You can have fun with that. You can go on eBay or Fanatics Collect. There are always opportunities. There are always things to buy. You can go to local shows. There's always opportunities there to buy. But you've got to be careful, because you've got to ask yourself, yeah, you may have the funds in hand to buy it, but who's that final person who's going to buy that from you at a premium over what you just paid for it? So being a business owner in this industry, there are so many things. Yes, I love it. It's a wonderful life being in this industry. I love it. Every day is exciting. And there are always opportunities to assist clients locally, globally, and also to buy collections. But be careful. If you're wanting to jump in, no matter what your cash flow is currently, I can tell you it can evaporate quickly if you're not careful. So hopefully today's given you a little bit of a snapshot of what it's like. Maybe one of these days I'll get one of our team members to film me running around our building, because I do get my steps in. If you're familiar with our building, we have 3 floors here. So I get plenty of steps in every day. So I don't have to go on a run every morning, though I often do, but I get plenty of steps in here. So, and I'm all over the place. My typical lunch hour takes me about 5 minutes. It takes me longer to order my lunch than I do to eat it some days, because there's always something else going on here, always something to do. And speaking of, we're getting ready to get back on Whatnot today. We will see if I get to hang out any longer today and talk to clients. And again, follow us on there under Got Baseball Cards. And again, if you need help with grading, remember, check us out. You can go to GotBaseballCards.com, as we have a quick submit form. You can go in there inside of about 30 to 60 seconds. You can provide us with all the info you need to help you out with grading. So I hope this episode has been educational. Hope you've learned a little bit. Hopefully you've gotten some laughs out of it. I can tell you I never dreamed of walking away buying a Flintstone ceiling fan in my last collection purchase, but you just never know what you will run into on any given day. So thanks so much for listening, everyone. Remember, most important thing I can share with you today is that Jesus loves you and wants a relationship with you and gave his life for you. So thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time. Have a great week.